Season one of Marvel Rivals has been out for around 3 weeks now, so we kind of have a current, like a pretty good grasp on like the current state of things in the game. And I wanted to talk specifically about the thing I know the most, which is Squirrel Girl, and how she can kind of shine in competitive, like at this current moment, even though I think she's still a bit undertuned. Hi, I'm Dirtmouth, and I'd like to just introduce myself real quick. I stream on YouTube, Twitch, and you can follow my X. I have a link for the socials on the screen, and you can check that out. But what got me into Marvel Rivals in the first place was seeing the character introduction for Squirrel Girl. I pretty much dismissed the game because I was just like, it looks like a, I just sort of fed into all the negative comments about the game. Like, oh, it looks like a mobile game. It runs like shit, and like it does still run like shit. The character brought me in because I actually really like squirrels in real life. The local squirrels around me, they quite appreciate me, and I appreciate them even more. And yeah, I love hero shooters. So once I like broke down the walls and like you know, the like the prejudice aspect of it, I was like, oh, I'm pretty into this game. And like I said, 50 hours of competitive later, I am really into this game. It's been a lot of fun, and I just feel like a lot of content creators aren't playing or even giving the time of day to Squirrel Girl. Besides, like maybe like Warren, who's like obviously the #1 Squirrel Girl in the world. But like, let's first talk about context, though. I think that's the most important thing to give, framing to what we are about to talk about. Season 0, the biggest issue with her was the fact that Hela and Hawkeye were so good. They could just spam you and at angles that were not good for you in terms of the damage fall off. It was just too much for you as a mobile, but you're a pretty large target. And Hawkeye was definitely like super strong, but now you can position yourself to not get one shot and still be effective for your team. So that has changed a lot. But yeah, that was really hard to deal with, like with Hela and Hawkeye specifically in season 0. Squirrel Stampede was pretty much a meme. It just was something that you just threw in there the second you got it, as long as there was like a person around, because you're just like, well, let me just hope that they run into the right thing. And the collision issues are still there, but like sometimes they'll just hit like the smallest bit of geometry and just go like so far away from what you actually want. And that's still an issue with it. Like you really do have to like understand what you're doing with it. But the fact that it didn't hone on anything and just would sort of like go off into the distance really just made it a throwaway ult that you would just throw in and just pray for the best. Hopefully they were in like a tube or a tunnel and they would get smacked by them. But it just wasn't a good ult. Season 0, this is for all ranks, so all of them combined. Her win rate was 45.99%, a 7.12% pick rate, and a 0.14 ban rate. So people were not afraid, and people were not climbing with it, most likely. Fast forward to season 1, and all of a sudden you have some new problems, like those nerfs that they did to the Hela and Hawkeye were great. I mean, they're still great. People are not picking them. I haven't played enough of them to truly know if it's warranted, or if people are just too like, oh, these characters are unusable in their current state. I honestly still think Hela would probably be pretty good. I think people just ride a nerf and just what people say a little bit too much, and they give up on a character even if they just are not as powerful as they once were. But you always got to play the meta, so you can't really blame them there. But the storm buffs and the Iron Man and just Iron Man in general, like a lot of times it's just a good pairing to have Storm and Iron Man like together flying around. Just it's one of the things that makes it hard for Squirrel Girl players, because you have to either get on their height and like get them like you know what I mean, and duel them there, or you have to like essentially ignore them and hope that you're dealing with one of the flankers or helping the fight in some other way, helping your front line. So the season 1 stats are 47.08 win rate, a 13.29 pick rate, and a 0.34 ban rate. So we went up around a percentage in win rate, most likely because of the ultimate is useful, but that pick rate goes up. You know why? Because it's fun. You actually get to, you have a reason to build your ultimate. We're getting kills now. It's a lot more fun. So that correlates perfectly in my brain. Like a little bit of a buff is definitely going to do that. And people are getting identified as that's a Squirrel Girl player. I'm going to ban that, so that's probably why that ban rate goes up as well. But not many, so that's always good going forward. You'll definitely most likely be able to pick your character. So now that we're up to speed with that, I want to talk about the meat and potatoes of this whole video, which is the matchups and how Squirrel Girl fits into the current game. And I'll go section by section, vanguards, duelists, strategists, with a little blurb at the beginning, just about the general premise of what you're trying to do. With vanguards, it's pretty much one of two things. You're either trying to apply pressure to the front line by breaking their shield or wall or whatever, or you're CCing the mobile vanguard that is trying to make space or get to your back line and apply that pressure. So that's pretty much just one or the other. It's just not a whole lot of in between. Penny is the one exception that I will talk about with that, because she plays just a little bit differently. But yeah, let's get on to that. Starting with Captain America, it's very simple. You just gotta hit your blockade and alert your team. You gotta let your ping it. You gotta let your team know that this guy is overextended and you need to stun him, and you need to stun him multiple times, like as much as you possibly can. You know, you just can't let him run around for free. It has to be a team effort to take him down. Doctor Strange, you pretty much just gotta apply pressure to his shield, break it because nobody else is going to. It's great because a lot of times people will push in front of the shield or behind the shield, and you can sometimes do damage to somebody and while also breaking a shield, but you could do so much burst damage. You need to break that shield because a lot of people aren't really capable of doing that, or they're doing something else. With Groot, he can shut down your ult completely with his little with his walls. So a big thing that I suggest against the Groot, and when you're playing against the Groot, is never bank on just sending your Squirrel Girl, like your Squirrel Stampede on the ground. You just always jump and throw it in the air, and it will go over it and into their backline. I do this whether there's a Groot or not as well, just because I think that that ult works better when you can't shoot at it like just on the ground moving in a straight line. It's a lot harder to hit something that's dropping and going, and like I said, you get to avoid a lot of that CC stuff, like, you know, a shield or something. You hit that back line because that's where you want to be anyways with that, and hopefully it ricochets and comes back, you know, towards the tank after it hits the support again for a second time. It usually kills them. But with that out of the way, with Hulk, it's as simple as this: hit that blockade on them. You have to make it so he's uncomfortable going to the back line or trying to create space. Double stun him at all costs, and always alert your team that you're doing it by pinging. If you're not shy, then just say it on the mic, like, you know what I mean. That call is really important, and it will deter him from wanting to even play one of the best tanks in the game. So it's just as simple as that. You can lob damage into him so easily, like it's very good at protecting your back line and creating that win condition. With Magneto, you want to get off angles and above angles with him. His shield also has it's not always touching the ground, so you can sometimes sneak shots underneath, but since he's not very mobile, you pretty much just want to find alternative angles where you can hit him from above, where his shield can't do as much if he's distracted with the front line, or just, you know, hard into him, just break that shield with just burst damage and try to help out your front line there. I think Penny is the easiest to play against as Squirrel Girl because she doesn't have any like major damage mitigation. Her mobility isn't crazy either, so you can always be pumping it into her. And her ult, where she's running freely, dropping the spider bombs, you can definitely hit that with 2 blockades, and nobody dies faster than Penny when I hit 2 blockades. Like, she just doesn't have that damage mitigation to stop, and it's just very easy to CC. And you can get into her nest really easy by ricochet shots if they're on angles that are impossible to see sometimes. And it's just honestly the easiest tank matchup you can have. It's one of my favorites to see on the enemy team. And you can get away from her very easily with your jump, so there's just not a lot to worry about with Penny. Thor is a rinse and repeat of Hulk. It's the same situation. Large man running at you, trying to create space. You hit your blockade. That's all you need to do. Alert your team. Hit the blockade. Very easy to evade his ult with the jump. He's not really an issue for you. He's an issue for your backline. So that's why you gotta hit those stuns. It's the same thing. And for last of the Vanguards, Venom. It's this. It's I am broken record. He is more mobile. This is actually a lot more difficult than the other two. The mobility on Venom is crazy. So you really do have to make your best effort to be patient and wait for him to be in predictable animations and not those big sweeping jumps that he can do. But other than that, it's the exact same concept. He's just trying to take space on your back line or apply pressure to your front line and getting in and getting out with his mobility. But yeah, you just need to hit that stun. So that wraps up the Vanguards. It's basically just pummel damage into them and hit your stuns. That's pretty much it. They're the biggest target. The splash damage is great. You can usually hit multiple targets at once with them. There's not a whole lot of intricacy with that. With many of them, it's mostly just evade and hit your stuns and compromise their positions by making them have to consider you at a top right angle if you're raiding down. And if you happen to hit a support or a DPS while you're going for that, try to get them down first before the tank. Like, it's just at that point, you know. Moving on to Duelist. First up, we have Black Panther. I find this matchup to be so inconsistent. It's all about hitting those skill shots, and I find it best to go vertical on him, as he has more of a horizontal dashing thing. So if you can get to a mid ground, not necessarily a high ground, but high ground if best case scenario. But I find it very just like, did he see me and I didn't catch him on the flank, or was it a thing where I cooked him for a second and he's going on my support and I just get to pounce on him? But like, it's just a lot of times like we both just end up disengaging from the fight, and I just find that to be a very inconsistent and weird one, to be completely honest with you. Black Widow almost speaks for itself when you look at their stats. It's 41% win rate or something right now. It's the worst in the game. It's very easy for you to spam her spots, which are very obvious. You don't have to get close to her at all. The mid-range on her is so easy to get. You don't even have to worry about using your stun. It rarely comes into play. You can just pressure her way more than she has to hit skill shots on you. So it's an extremely favorable matchup for you. And just stay away from those like really long lines of sight, and you'll be fine, because you are still a big target. A good Widow will hit you, but it's very easy to avoid. With Hela, it's just don't get caught jumping. Like, Hela only seems to get me when I'm jumping, running away, or jumping trying to get some cheeky angle. I just find that when I'm on the ground and I'm playing within my team, I'm rarely getting bursted down by Hela. It's just a line of sight thing. You can still apply a lot of pressure to her, like from a safe distance. So just try to stay out of the air, because those are the easiest shots you'll get, because you're on that straight trajectory. You will just go up and she'll shoot you in the face like multiple times. It's not good for you. And when she goes into her ult, you can take her out of it with one full clip. It's all 10, but you can take her out if she's not paying attention to you. You can unload your entire 10 shots into her, and that will take her out of it. But that takes a long time, and you know what I mean. Like, your team's probably dead. Iron Fist is a fight that's kind of similar to Black Panther, but I find it to be a bit easier because his horizontal mobility isn't as quick, and it's really all about just jumping back to your team and not getting caught in his punches. And your blockade can absolutely destroy him. You have 2 shots at it. If you mess them up, that's kind of on you. Pretty easy to counter. It's great for helping your back line. If he's not focused on you and he's doing his stuff, it is so easy to focus him out. So with Iron Man, I feel 2 ways about it. If I'm being pressured by, say, a flanker or something, or a tank, and I have to worry about that and Iron Man, it's a problem. But if I just have to focus on shooting Iron Man, it's a little bit easier than you'd think. When he does his mobility, he's not dangerous at that point in time. So if you can't hit those shots, it's not a big deal. But he's easier to hit than you would think. You just need the time to take your shots and be patient with them, because if you just do the panic shooting a bunch, you're probably not going to hit them. But they're fairly predictable. So Iron Man, you really just gotta hope that your front line is establishing space for you, so you can focus on that. And it's really not as bad. You can ricochet them off the walls sometimes. It's not as hard as you think, but also just like use the high ground to your advantage. If you can get horizontal with him on top of a building, it's extremely easy. Or you can make it harder on him by doing your tail bounce. Next, we have Magic, which I find to be one of the more interesting matchups because Magic has a 52% win rate across like all ranks through the entire like length of the game. At least it's higher now with the buff, and Squirrel Girl's kit is so anti-magic, like in every way. There's nothing that isn't great against her, and I find that that win rate is probably there because of the overall sentiment that Squirrel Girl is a bad a bad hero, and like I just think that that's just so crazy to me that there's this hard counter. Like I feel like this is an actual hard counter that makes their life so much worse, and it's the magics are a menace on your back lines and getting out, but like it's honestly pretty easy to outplay her two portals because you have two shots as well, and you only have to hit one of them. So if you're just the slightest bit patient, and if she's that close to you to where you're swinging, uh, she's at that shotgun range, so you're gonna blast her, and you can get away easily with the tail bounce. So like you can help out your supports. She should definitely not be trying to fight you because it's a horrible matchup for her. So I just think it's very strange that her win rate is what it is when this character is absolutely a beast at taking her down. I think that it's completely overlooked and should be considered heavily if you're getting like worked by a magic. So Mr. Fantastic is kind of a boring matchup. It's can't really burst him down because of all of his survivability. He can't really close the distance on you very well, and you can get out if he does get in. So it's kind of best to just not really mess with him. It's extremely like not interesting. It's just I just don't really mess with him whenever I see him, and he doesn't really mess with me either. So one of those weird fights that just generally doesn't happen. Moon Knight, I think it's a very favorable matchup for Squirrel Girl because you can jump over his ult, jump out of the way of his ult, so you're never going to get caught by that. The Ankh is a one-shot for you, and where you're positioned in a battle generally is by your support, where that Ankh appears usually, or on the back wall, like right behind you. So you're usually in that spot to be able to take that out, and his mobility is pretty lackluster along with a pretty slow and big hitbox. I honestly feel like you can take those duels so often and win very easily because of your mobility. And I just think that, as a side note, when he's your teammate, it's actually one of the most redundant things to have Squirrel Girl and Moon Knight. And it's actually just, it's my least favorite person to be playing with because I just feel like it's the same role doing the exact same thing, except for he's worse in my opinion. The fact that people think Moon Knight's good and Squirrel Girl's bad actually blows my mind because yes, his ult is good, but I think that that's not even intentional. I think the damage is more than it should be, and I just can't really get over it. Like I think protecting your backline as the players get better and being able to stun things that are mobile and have high skill ceilings when you can counter that with actual abilities like the blockade, I think it's just so much more valuable, and we'll see that as the game matures for sure. Like I'm very positive that people will start recognizing the value in that. Namor. This is one of my characters that I have the least fun going against. Having to shoot the squids all the time is it's effective to do on Squirrel Girl, but it takes away that time where you could be doing something else. And the fact that he can get away, with that invulnerability, and the accuracy of his spear is very good against you because you are very large. So there's a lot of pressure that he applies to you and the team, and it's all the distraction just culminates into you not doing your job because you have to take care of other stupid business. Scarlet Witch is almost completely ineffective against you because once she gets into the range to where she is effective, you're at such a close range, you're gonna probably hit her, so she most likely will just run away from you, and her ult, which is one of the worst ults in the game, cannot catch you because of your leap, and it's just a very favorable matchup. But you always have that time where they do get that drop on you, and you miss a shot, and you're like, oh, all right, and then you miss another shot, and you're like, oh, I can still get this, and then you're dead. And it's just that's unfortunate, it's embarrassing for you, but it happens to all of us. So Yeah, I'm not too worried about Scarlet Witch. So Spider-Man, extremely hard target to like lock down with your blockade because he can attach to you from above, so you don't even have the chance to really hit him with your squirrels. So it's actually a very, it's hard to actually get him. You really got to sort of retreat back into your team and hope that they start pressuring him to get out, because hitting Spider-Man is very difficult with Squirrel Girl. Um, the sentiment on him being not very good helps a lot because you don't have to go against them too often, but you can help when he's doing it to somebody else and you're in the range. It's still a lot more difficult though than most in the entire game, I would say. And as a teammate, his team up is really good, especially against tanks. If you have a Spider-Man that's like popping off on your team, or at least just exists, the fact that you can have now 3 stuns, you can shut down a lot of things with that. It is actually kind of crazy that you can go hit your C, your team up ability, and then back to back blockades. It's pretty wild. You should absolutely abuse that because it's so helpful. Squirrel Girl is just an ego duel. Hopefully you win the duel. You know exactly what she does, what the movement is when she goes up and down, and both those nuts. And you just want to contest the angles to just make her not do what you want to do. You know what I mean? Put her in bad spots. But it's just an ego duel, so you just want to win that ego duel for sure. Star-Lord is definitely one of the most difficult matchups for Squirrel Girl because he can kite you very effectively at a range that's just slightly uncomfortable for you. And he has the mobility to go up and to the side and back and forth very quickly. He really can bait out your utility. It's just a hard matchup. You have a huge hitbox, and the spray on those guns aren't too bad, so you can really like lay in a lot of headshots to Squirrel Girl and like just sort of kite around and just sort of take the battle as you want it. It's one of my least favorites to go against, and I just think that there's not a whole lot of answers I have because I can't even say hit him with the blockade because he's not going to be on the ground very often. Like if you can hit a jumping shot and get it, like congrats, but more than likely he's going to beat you most of the time if he gets you in that one-on-one. Storm in her current state, basically just be as high up in the game as you can get. Try to contest her. There's not a whole lot you can do. Hopefully you have a hit scan on your team. This may be one of those reasons that you need to switch. She's just so incredibly strong in the game right now. Like I said, it's still not as hard to hit if you have the time and your tank is applying pressure and the Storm can't be as aggressive and hold as aggressive angles. You can take your time and definitely hit her. However, yeah, it's one of those, you better hope that you have another hit scan on your team or, somebody to apply pressure elsewhere to where it's not just you focusing on her. Winter Soldier is one of the most interesting fights you could have with Squirrel Girl because it's just so inconsistent. So in the kits don't align very well. Like it's like he's not generally trying to push into people too much, but he does want to get a good grapple, punch combo if he can, but not really into you because you're going to thrive at that close range. You just immediately stun him after that. So he's not going to want to do that, but he at the same time he can definitely just a couple like 2-shot you in the head, and that makes for the exchange to be kind of weird because not everybody, like, you don't want to, like, he doesn't want to use all of his kit on you, which you think would sound like an advantage, but I mean Squirrel goes so large that his base gun can also just really take it to you because your mobility of being like, oh, I'm jumping into the air, that's not that difficult of a shot to hit actually. So it's a very inconsistent fight. Whoever hits their shots wins, and I just think it's a super honest, and I honestly really like it because sometimes they do pull you in and they do combo you and you do die. And you're like, oh, I thought that was my advantage, and it wasn't. And sometimes you just absolutely stun them, and it just looks like, what was he even thinking? Why would he even try to do that? But like I said, it's very honest and very unique matchup in my opinion. It can go either way. Wolverine's in that Storm tier where it's just like, yeah, you have a kit that actually like can affect him. I'm not saying that about Storm, but I'm saying that, like, yes, your tools in your your kit are good against Wolverine in theory, but he's so overtuned at this point that you're, even with the triple stun, it might not be enough against Wolverine because the good players, they're going to use their cooldowns perfectly and they're going to be a hassle. And the good news is that when he's not going against you, You can help out your backline or your tank, most likely your tank, because that's what he's going to be going for as like a tank shredder. You can, he is kind of wide, so hitting your blockade on him isn't as difficult as you would think. And I think that just the lack of, like, there's just not that many stuns in the game. And I think that against all these like aggressive characters, playing characters, they're just not challenged because everyone just assumes, oh, Squirrel Girl's bad. So we're moving on to the strategist now, and I want to put one big tidbit out there. The thing that I notice the most in all of my games is that I need to get my ultimate faster than they do, because right now the game is run by support ults. With the best used support ults pretty much are swaying the game because they negate so much from the damage in tanks, and you can just save your team outright. But Squirrel Girl can get her ult extremely fast, especially in the beginning of a match, because everyone's usually grouped up together for the first time. You get your ult faster, and then you get that ult and you let it go. And it's not even that you have to like kill them, it's just to be out of sync with their support ults. Like, you want to not be on the same, like, you want to be building up at the same rate and being at the same point in time with that, so then they can counter you. So you get it quick, and like, since the ability is now good, the Stampede, you usually can get a kill early on in the fight because you usually can get the ult first out of anybody. So it's the biggest thing that I could say about strategists is just get your ultimate before them and get totally out of sync with them. Up first is Adam Warlock. I think it's a favorable matchup because he has to play around his teammates to get value with his lack of ability, and you can usually just get the splash damage on him. Easy to kill him when he does his res if you're in position to. Never really have too much of a problem with Adam Warlock. With Cloak and Dagger, it's pretty good for you. Like, you don't have to worry about them very much because you can always get away. The only issue with them is trying to get them early in the fight, so then they're not building up their ultimate. So I always will take the risk of going slightly out of position in a forward if I spot them low, or if I can get them, because their ultimate is so good. I don't really mind fighting Cloak either. Same with the Scarlet Witch kind of vibe, where it's like, yeah, as long as they don't have that bubble, that healing bubble, like, I feel pretty confident in my ability to hit the shots at their range of doing their auto lock damage to you. Invisible Woman, it's another, like, there's not a whole lot to worry about with Invisible Woman. You just need to find the angle if you can on her, and try to, like, you can also spam guess where she will likely go because your AoE on your primary fire is so big. But none of her CCing or like abilities really do much against you, and you can always get out of it really easy. So it's just kind of like if you see them and you can take advantage of it, go for it. Loki gives me a lot of problems because of all of the clones. You cannot let them get that free value. It's distracting. You pair that with a Namor and you're shooting so many things. Like, it is, and you need to get rid of it, because I can't just rely on your teammates to just like think that they're going to go for that first, because you have one of the best primary fires to get rid of those things. So I do think it's your responsibility to get rid of things like onks, squids, clones. So it takes up a lot of your attention, and his ability to get out of situations makes it not very good. Like, if you can like get a weird flank on him, great, but like, it's hard to lock him down. Definitely one of the more interesting supports to go against. I definitely have big problems with him sometimes. With Luna Snow, there's nothing I'm concerned about, like, her kit with damaging me. It's simply, does she have ult? I should not be ulting if she has ult. Or if your other DPS or your other players have a good ult that's better than yours, because Squirrel Stampede's not that great. So if you can bait it out with that, now you can, because before you wouldn't even able to, like, the Lunas wouldn't even like press Q if you use your ult, but now they will, because now it's actually dangerous. So with Luna, it's just about finding a good position and definitely trying to isolate her if you can. I like to jump in the air and shoot over like all the front line and just try to hit some shots in the back, and a lot of times I can get those kills on her early in the fights. Mantis is also similar to that, but I don't get too close to Mantis because when she uses her damage amplifier on herself, it is extremely deadly. So when you have such a big hitbox, and you can be hit by that, it's not great because you can more safely at like a medium to long range hit your blockade on her, and she's quick, but she doesn't have like mobility escape. So I find that to be a better recipe than getting up and close in her face as much. I do respect the space on Mantis. Rocket Raccoon, I actually try to avoid killing Rocket Raccoon until the end because of his mobility. Your kit just does not work well against him. He's very small. The mobility is insane. The lob is too slow. The wall like riding that he can do is just it's too much. It's better to focus the other less mobile support than to deal with him and make him the cleanup kill. If you happen to get the stun on him, great. But I honestly don't recommend going after him unless he's like you catch him with his pants down. He's just not paying attention. But I don't waste my shots on him because I could be doing something more productive. With Jeff, I just don't have much to say. Um, he is a very easy to avoid ult now that they nerfed it, and it has a height ceiling, and it's pretty easy to kill him when he's swallowed up your teammates since you've avoided it. He's not an issue. Generally get sad when my team plays him because I just don't feel like he provides enough for the team. Yeah, I don't have much to say about Jeff. His hitbox is also pretty easy to hit. He just I don't know. His face gets hit by those nuts like all the time, and it's just not good for Jeff. I think they could buff Jeff in some way. So that rounds out the strategists, and I just want to talk just very generally and very loosely about each role in like team comps. So as a Squirrel Girl player, I just want my tanks to play the meta for the most part. It doesn't really matter what they're playing as long as they're pushed up and creating space for me so I can operate, and I'll help them create more space. It doesn't really matter. I find like the tanks are just generally a bit homogenous for me. I just don't think they're all that interesting. They usually do one of two things. They either block or they dive, essentially. With duelists, my favorite like partner would be a hit scan or a flanker. That's pretty much half the cast, so it's actually just a lot of synergies with just about everybody, and that's why I like it. The only times I'm not liking it is like I don't want to be paired with like a Black Widow. It's too redundant. We're not going to create enough space. A Hawkeye I don't generally like. But anybody that's taking space, I'm pretty cool with. I think that Squirrel Girl is a great accompanying duelist for like just about anybody really. Yeah, and Moon Knight. I think Moon Knight. There's too much similar with Moon Knight and the way the damage is generated. So I don't really like that combo. But just about anybody else, I'm pretty cool with because they usually make space for me and I can make space for them. And in the strategist, I also just want them to sort of play the meta. Like I want my Luna Dance. I want that ult. I want a Cloak and Dagger ult. I don't want a Jeff ult. like, I respect the Rocket Raccoons now because I understand that it's a mobility thing and you're trying to get away from the aggressive, duelists and tanks that are in the game. So I definitely understand that. But yeah, for the supports, it doesn't really matter. I've never upset playing Squirrel Girl because I always believe it's on you as a duelist to go get your health packs and not ask the healers for it. And the way you position is generally easy enough for the supports to help you out. So I don't have too many gripes with that. So now I want to talk about some maps. There's 3 types of maps. There's Domination, Convoy, and Convergence. And I'm going to go down in that order and talk about each one. I think Domination is the worst mode for Squirrel Girl. The free-flowing, less team cohesive element to it doesn't work in her favor. Squirrel Girl wants to be bunched up around a cart. And the map design tends to have a lot more of an open space, and that means less ricochets, less places for your squirrels to just bounce, and then the maps move around a lot of animation on the maps. So those things all work against you. I think that leads to the the lowest win rate that out of the 3 types for Squirrel Girl players. Next is Convoy, which is the best. It's for that very reason that there is this objective that is moving that everybody's fighting around almost exclusively. Um, there's, yes, obviously some flankers sometimes, but it's for the most part all about that one small area, and that's where you get to thrive with your burst damage and everybody being clumped up, being able to get those big squirrel stampede kills, and yeah, it's the win rate reflects it. Uh, you can just do so much when everybody's fighting around a central area, and Squirrel Girl truly is great at that. And with convergence is a bit of a mixed bag since it's a little bit of both. The first point is super important because you want to get it as fast as possible just to switch it into that payload mode. Once you're in that payload mode, it's much better for you. As I said with the previous 2 modes, it's just like you're now in that win rate, like that higher win rate like mode. Like, so getting that on offense as fast as possible is super important. And like the other thing is like you can conversely look at it at on defense and be like, well, if we lose the first, like, don't think that you have to switch immediately because now it's switching into a mode that you like, even if you give it up right away. Now they have to play around the payload, and you can then thrive with that. So don't get too down if you lose that right away. You know what I mean? Like, your team might be booned, but you shouldn't be booned. You have to be like, okay, well, it's payload. This is what I like. This is like why, like, this is the best scenario for me, the best mode for me to play. So, it's a nice mix of both. But yeah, those are my, thoughts on those modes, and I think that the win rates all really reflect all that information right there. So my key takeaways from all of this is I still think she's a bit undertuned, and whether it be like a small buff like a projectile speed or an ammo amount, a cooldown reduction on something, or if the ultimate had like more HP, I think she's so close to being meta if she gets one of those buffs, like a micro buff. I honestly think that she would move into a very meta playable picked character. There's just so many positives she has against the like much of the cast in terms of her kit. And if you can just aim and you can get that situational awareness in fights, you can bring massive value to your team and truly protect, your backline as well as your tanks in those weird situations when they're getting bullied on. I just think that the tier list that you see from like content creators are generally correct to Squirrel Girl not being so high, because and the stats back that up. But I also believe that people take that a little bit too literally. Like, you can climb on any character in this game from what I've seen, and nobody's so bad that you just can't do anything. You know what I mean? I just really think that people care a little bit too much about team comp and a little bit too much about hero selection. Like, sometimes it is warranted, but not that much. I think that the game's beautifully designed in that way. It's actually pretty amazing. With bands, you can do so much with that as well. But yeah, I think that a lot of people dismissed Squirrel Girl very early on and didn't realize how much value the kit has. And like, if you're like good at aiming and good at mechanics, like, I could just see like it being absolutely a problem for a lot of people if you're hitting your shots and hitting your blockades. And like, I just think that, definitely underrated and on the rise. I think that she really has a place in the game, and like, just like I said, a micro buff or two away from being absolutely meta. So if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying yourself watching it and learning, and I would like to hear what you have to say. If any of the sections like made sense to you, you have a well butt, I wouldn't mind hearing it. You know what I mean? Say whatever you'd like. It's also free to sub, so if you want to hit that, do that. That'd be really helpful for me. It's my first video, so you can be mean, you can tell me really anything, be nice. Like, I would love to improve on doing this. I just I like making content. It's been really fun. I'm just having a blast doing this. And like I said, I stream Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday evenings, Central Time USA. I keep it loose just so it's like, I don't want to like lie to people and not go live sometimes. I just keep it loose. I stream those 3 days, and yeah, I'm on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. So yeah, thanks again, and I hope to see you in game.